Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Hidden Agenda. All right, we're going to talk about the city meetings on last night. There's some things I think that we need to get out there for everybody to understand that happened in that meeting. We need to make some corrections on some things that we actually shared. And I got a letter this morning that I kind of want to talk about as well. First things first, let me go in here and state we shared a post regarding the city's debt. And what was stated in that post was the $11 million of revenue, which comes into the general fund revenue, was shown to be used as the basis for all of the revenue for the city for their debt. And that's just not the case at all. I hadn't paid enough attention to it, and I probably should have before sharing the post, but digging into it, we have to understand that the city has an overall debt. And what we found out today, it's sitting somewhere around about $70 million. Now, that's how far in debt the city is. And I know for whoever watched that video or who attended the meeting last night, no, the city is not at zero debt. That is, I don't know how else to say it other than flat out false. It was pitched a certain way, and we'll explain that here in a little bit. But we did share information that did not contain all the everything that was needed for you to be well informed. So we're going to correct that tonight and make sure and we're going to use some information to share by an alderman today, so you understand it. So with that in mind. Before we jump into that I do want to come back to something that was brought up last night in the meeting, because it's been a topic of conversation quite a bit here recently. Alderman Jimmy White has made a proposal to freeze property taxes for anyone 65 or older. Now, I understand what Alderman White was saying in the meeting, and I'll explain that to you because there were some differences in there, what he was trying to explain and what people were understanding. And I think we need to provide some clarity on that there so people understand where he was at. Alderman White, right now, the state, back in 2006, the voters of Tennessee actually changed, had an amendment made to the state constitution. And that amendment, what it did was it took... It allowed cities, municipalities, and counties to go in here and put property tax freezes on. Well, in doing so, it actually created a law that is now in Tennessee Code Annotated that the state legislature has created and put in there. What Jimmy's idea was he didn't want to go through the state's process of doing a property tax freeze. He was hoping to do it just at the local level, and I don't believe that can be done, but I'm not sure if it can or not. So I don't want to venture to say it can or not, but it can or can't be done. But in doing so, he didn't want to put caps on how much people make in it, because it's really kind of designed for lower income residents. He was just trying to make sure that anyone who's over the 65, regardless of your income level or your economic status, was able to not have to pay taxes anymore. He wants to be all inclusive instead of just being a few people. And I get that. I think that's a very admirable thing on his part to try to push that. Whether that can go about or not, we won't know until next meeting, because from what I understand, mayor's going to invite MTAS to come down and help share some information on that. So we're kind of in a holding curve with a holding pattern right now until we know what's happening with that property tax. All right, going back to the city's debt. As stated, the problem was that the post that we originally shared didn't have all of the revenue streams. And I am going to take and pull up a post that Alderman Fred Ellis shared today, which is a breakdown of each debt for each department or fund accounts, as it's really is looked at. Property taxes generally cover everything that's in the general fund. Solid waste fund, that's your garbage rates that you pay every month. The rates that they collect at the transfer station, all of that pays that debt. The school system, they get money from sales tax and I believe property tax as well. I think that was actually mentioned in a meeting last night. Water and sewer gets theirs from the water and sewer rates. Gas gets theirs from the gas rates. Broadband gets theirs from the broadband rates. And electric, Alderman Ellis stated that comes from the electric rates. That's not entirely true. The way LexNet is set up is they're generating revenue. And that money that they've got coming in is actually going to LES to pay off the debt on this that they have right now that they're carrying to do this broadband project. We're going to dig a little bit more into that there. So, when you look at it, LES has a debt of somewhere of over $44 million. That's not being paid by electric rates completely. I mean, there's parts in there that are being paid by electric rates, but the vast majority of that's actually being paid down through the broadband rates. So we're going to come back in here and we're going to look at this here and give you a little bit better understanding of where the city is in debt and where the revenue is coming for each one of those debt services. So, and then I want to come back to that comment about us being zero debt. Blake Mitchell, one of the alderman candidates for position 6, actually put a post up today sharing the letter that was sent down from the state utility boards, showing that we're net negative. So he made a good comment there, and I'll save that for later. But let's come back in here and look at this. And like I said, I'm coming down from Alderman Ellis's page to read this stuff. So this is where it's coming from. But general government, which is your general fund, includes like city hall, fire, rescue, fire, police, public works. I believe those are the ones that are included. There may be some other smaller entities in there as well, but that's part of your general fund. The general fund receives majority of its taxes from broadband. From property taxes, and they, their budget, they receive about $11 million per year. They're in debt for $1.17 million. So $1.2 million. I'm just going to round it up there, make it a little bit easier. Solid waste. Now this here is your trash pickup. The transfer station they've got out there, the hauling the trash off, the same thing is included with, recyclables. All that's included in that department. Now, and this is what they call an enterprise department because enterprise fund because they're generating revenue off of rates, not from property taxes, which can vary some. But solid waste is in debt for 1.832 million, so we're just going to call it 1.8 million. The school system is in debt for 2.7 million, and they're using sales tax to take and pay their debt off. Water and sewer is in debt for 14.8 million, and they're using water and sewer rates to pay that debt. The gas is in debt for 2.6 million. Gas rates obviously is how they're paying that. Broadband is in debt for 2.6 million, and they're using broadband rates to pay for that. Now, also remember, last night they just voted in another $4 million bond, so we're going to say they're going to be in debt for 6.6 million. And the last one is LES, which is they're in debt for 44.15. I'm just going to round it down to 44. And again, in his post, he says electric rates. That's not completely true. The money coming in from when LexNet was created, there's grant monies in there. If I remember correctly, I believe the grants were somewhere around about 27 million. And what happens is that as those grants are being awarded back to us in cash value, that will pay that debt down. In addition, the money that's coming into LexNet from their broadband rates is being used to pay on that debt as well. They're just paying it to LES, and then LES is making the payment. So that's and broadband that's where our big debt was, and now. So understand that's where the greater part of our debt was accumulated at. If I remember correctly, I believe it was 55 million, 53 to 55 million is what the original bond was for to do LexNet. Now, remember in that 55 million, you're going to have that $27 million in grant money coming back in to pay that off. And if I remember correctly, I don't think it was, I think it was two meetings ago. General Manager Brad Jones of LES stated that I believe it was like $48 million is what the project ended up costing us total. So they came in quite a bit under budget, which is a good thing. And, they were ahead of schedule, which is another good thing. So that's where that's at. Now I'm going to continue to come back in here because there was a gentleman by the name of Stephen Bates of Guardian Advisory, which is a bond company that the city has used for decades. He made the comment that the city is basically debt-free. They owe $1.1 million in general government debt, but has over $6 million in reserves. Okay, let's take a look at this here. If let's say you've got money set aside for retirement, and you go out and borrow money. Well, guess what? You just took on debt. Regardless of what you've got to be able to pay that debt, you're in debt. I mean, you can't spend that any other way, is you are in debt. This is what you have to understand is, and this was pitched last night. I actually heard it on the meeting. At the very last thing in the meeting before they adjourned the meeting, was the city was in zero debt. Well, those numbers that Alderman Ellis shared was, we're at $70 million in debt, not including the $4 million we just took out. So we're well over $70 million in debt total in the whole city. Now we've got a bunch of different revenue streams, but we are in debt. There is no such thing as zero debt. And Blake Mitchell made the analogy the other day about, earlier today about, if, I take a mortgage out on my house, and just because I have enough money coming in monthly for payments, or I've got enough money sitting in the bank, doesn't mean I don't have zero debt. You still have debt. You still have to pay interest on it. I mean, this is common sense stuff. I mean, oh man, it's almost going back to that voodoo math again. Let's try to sell the people on something that's just not true. The city is in debt for over $70 million at this point. They have to pay the debt. You know, maybe one fund has enough money sitting in reserves to pay off their debt. I don't think LES would have that kind of money sitting in the funds to pay it off. Obviously, next LexNet doesn't have that kind of money to pay it off. So, bottom line is, they're in debt. I mean, they don't even have the money sitting in reserves to pay it off. And when we get down to the end of this here, the plain cut and basic truth of it is the board voted this stuff in. That's it. I mean, this is when you look at it, this stuff isn't just thrown on us and we're forced to take it. The board has to approve it. So, let's get in there and tell the truth. Now, again, something this gentleman, Mr. Bates, said was he personally thanked the board for the work done over the last 4 years to pay down city debt, and said Lexington is in the best financial shape in years and that most cities our size would love to be where we are from a financial standpoint. You guys still with me? We lost a signal for a back. Just make sure. I'm getting text about it. Thank you guys for sending me text on it. I did get a notification up here. I'm assuming you're seeing it at this point. Yeah, it shows that we're back up here. So my apologies for that there. I don't know why I lost service for a minute there, but it did. Okay, getting back to where I was at there. And I just lost my train of thought. That's one of the problems of being old and not feeling that well. Well, crap. Like I said, I forgot where I was at here. So I'm just going to try to pick up on this here, and hopefully I don't know where we cut off or anything. So, for this gentleman to sit here and say that we don't have that we have zero debt and we're in great shape. Yeah, that's just wrong. I mean, let's just be honest. This is what I know. Somewhere in the neighborhood, if we approved a bond for somewhere around about $53 to $55 million for LexNet, I'm going to say, let's just say we approved $50 million. Okay? That's happened in the last 4 years. We just approved a $4 million bond last night. There's $54 million. The last 2 years, we have approved two bonds totaling $10 million, which is going to water and sewer. Okay, so if we are in the shape, this guy's, I can't say it any other way. Fred posted this on his page saying they've been paying down debt in the best financial shape in their years. I mean, come on. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, yeah, we may have paid down debt that we've had, but we've taken on a lot of new debt. If you looked at LexNet, the last two, I mean, 50 and 4, there's 54, and then 10 million in water and sewer. Well, hell, that means we've taken on $64 million in debt. Now, granted, there's some fluctuations in there with LexNet because of how they've had to take the bond staggering it apart. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jeff Graves and Brad Jones picking up the ball did a phenomenal job with LexNet. I mean, that's there's no argument there. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, to sit there and say that we've paid down debt. Yeah, we may have paid down old debt, but we got a lot of new debt. So, a lot more than we've ever had in the past. And that, again, is all approved by this board. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the money that they've approved, they borrowed for LexNet, I think is a wonderful thing. And LexNet at some point in time frame, probably 10, 15, 20 years down the road, will actually start generating revenue for the city. But the thing is, with that bond, what it has really done is it has actually taken and provided services. Excuse me. I'm still feeling a bit under the weather. But When we're borrowing money to increase our services, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, to me, I think it's a wonderful thing that people are able to have broadband now in rural markets. I mean, 5 years ago, it was unheard of. Nobody was even considering that. I mean, it just wasn't an option. I mean, luckily, you had it either through your cell phone or maybe if you were in a market that had cable, which we all know that Charter's been notorious for picking up the low hanging fruit. They don't go after anything that doesn't maximize their profits. And you know what? And that's what businesses do. You know, wow, I'm going to tell you right now, getting on some of these satellites, we did that once with HughesNet. My gosh, it was expensive. So, when it gets down to it, that's really where we are with things. And I've got a question here. Clarity, I was told the money for the LexNet was a grant. They borrowed the money. Yes, there is, and the grant does not pay for it all. Let me explain that to you, Jade. The grant is not paying for it all. I think Brad had said the whole project was coming in around about $48 million. And if I remember, and like I said, I believe the grant amount was $27 million is what we're going to get paid. So roughly that leaves us $21 million difference we got to pay out. And that's the reason that LexNet is not immediately drawing money because they got to pay debts. I mean, there's debt services out there that's got to be paid. So that is how it's going. Now, if you notice that Lexington Electric's, their debt is still sitting around about $44 million. Well, what's happened is we haven't received all of the grant money yet. And until that grant money comes completely in, we're going to be sitting, and as that grant money comes in, it's being put on the debt to reduce that debt service. But, there is payments still have to be made. So the revenue that LexNet is doing is bringing in is keeping them operating, but also making payments. And that's one of the reasons they had to use the $4 million bond last night is they need some additional revenue because, fortunately they're hooking up, at a pretty good clip. So they're bringing in more people onto the system, which is a great thing. One of the terms that was thrown out in the initial discussions about everything that was going on with LexNet was what they call a take rate. And that means, if they've got, I think Lexington Electric has about 18,000 customers. So they needed, I believe 30% take rate, which is going to be about 6,000 people, a little less, would put them sitting at a break-even point. And they've almost done that, which is, again, nothing at all what they were anticipating to happen. They're about a year ahead of the game and have really just knocked it out of the park. So they've done a great job on all of this here, getting it done. But yeah, we had to borrow money to make this happen because the grant did not pay. It's not 100% grant, so that's where that is. And I hope that answered your question, Jade. If you need some more clarification, just a comment and I'll get it out there for you. So anyway, the city is at $70 million in debt. The line of zero debt is crap. I don't know how else to say it. It's just crap. We don't have zero debt. When we look at this thing here is, heck, even, in my household, we do our best to stay as close to zero debt as possible. But we take on debt mainly for the reason of maintaining our credit score. We use credit cards on occasion, and we don't like to pay a lot of interest, so we pay them down. But and we have the means to do so, and we have the income to do so. But again, to sit here and just, to me, it was cherry picking out one particular fund to say, the general fund is getting off property taxes is $1.1 million in debt, $1.2 million in debt, and we have enough money to pay the debt off, so therefore we have zero debt. And that's just, like I said, again, that's a false flag. Yes, you could pay the debt off, and why don't you pay the debt off? If you can. But the thing is, you have to maintain X amount of money in your reserves That's required by state law. In addition, I mean, let's go back in this year, $497,000 pulled out of the rainy day fund. Last year, money was pulled out of out of reserves to balance the budget. So what happens here is we're spending our money that we've got saved. The major problem with this here is, and this is what most people don't overlook, they don't quite understand. So I'm going to try to explain it to you in a little bit easier terms. Every month we have to pay, all of us, we got to pay electric bill, we got to pay a water bill. If we got a cell phone, we got to pay a cell phone bill. That bill comes every month. It's not a one-time purchase. Now, let's just take a cell phone bill. We pay that monthly. If we happen to buy our cell phone, that's a one-time expense. And, if you borrowed some money from your savings to pay that cell phone, well, that's okay. But if you're borrowing money from your savings to pay the bill every month because you don't have the money, well, eventually your savings goes down. And, when that happens, you don't have savings anymore. So think about that, because that's what's going on here. When your savings goes down, eventually you're going to have to figure out a way to raise money to pay for that cell phone bill every month, because you've spent all your money out of savings. You ain't got nothing left. Money's got to come from somewhere. Well, in the general fund application, that money's coming from property taxes. Now let's go back in here and let's look at the stuff with the other funds. Well, you know what? If we want to buy $1 million shredder and we need money to pay for the $1 million shredder, well, we're going to have to get that from increasing the garbage rates, which we saw our garbage rates went up. Now, I'm not saying that the garbage rates were increased to pay for that debt, but I mean, it's $1.8 million in debt, so they got to get the money from somewhere. So now that's a one-time expense, but you hire, excuse me again. You hire somebody to run that shredder, that $1 million shredder. Well, now you got to pay that person every single time, every single month, every single week. You got to pay them. That's a recurring expense because you have to have that person to operate it. Now, did they hire somebody solely for running that there? I have no clue. Don't know. But that's an example of how a recurring expense happens. And recurring expenses, for the most part, is going to be that we've seen in the general fund, somewhere around about $7.5 million of the $11 million. All right, we lost signal again there. This is one of the things, I don't have broadband where I'm at. We're on Starlink, so I don't know if this is an issue with Starlink or what, but we're back on now. Going back in, this recurring expense, what happens is we've taken money out of our savings account to increase recurring expenses or to pay for the recurring expense. Well, guess what? Unless we're pulling money out of savings account, which will eventually dwindle down to nothing, as we've already explained, you're going to be sitting here having to pay. They got to find a way to pay for that. So, that's where the problem lies. This is what people have a hard time understanding is, when they give a pay raise or they give a increase in benefits, that money's got to come somewhere. Well, when they give a pay raise or they hire somebody and they use the savings account to do so, the savings account can't sustain it. So the only place they can get it from in the general fund is by raising your property taxes. Now, property taxes is just one of the things that I've heard people talk about that they're upset about. The other thing they're talking about is utility rates. Now, and I need to give you some clarity on some of this stuff with utility rates. First, I want to come in here to Lexington Electric System, LES. LES is a different beast. They are not the same as Lexington Utilities, the gas, water, and sewer department. They're a separate entity. LES is governed by a TVA. Now, I know, trust me, we got the highest electric bill we've ever had at the shop in town. And That again is being paid for. That's through LES. I can't compare it to the house because here at the house we have we're on Carroll County Electric, but and for what it's worth, we had our highest bill ever here as well, and both of them attribute to the same thing. TVA will set rates; they'll increase rates. Now, and understand that they're not going to the electric company and saying, "All right, I'm jacking your rates up." What they're doing is saying, "I'm going to charge more for the power that I'm selling you that you sell out to your people." So that's our supplier. So they in the last 2 years, I think they ended up doing 9.9, but it was 10% is what TVA had stated they were going to actually raise the rates. So in the last 2 years, our rates have gone up, not because of LES, but because of TVA. Now, let me also tell you something else, too, that you have to take and think about here. Is TVA can control how a utility like LES can charge. In other words, if you want to raise your rates, if LES wants to raise their rates, they got to go see TVA. Make sure it's okay with TVA. TVA, they're going to have to give a good reason why they're raising their rates. TVA is actually protecting us to keep them from doing that. Well, let's say TVA says, yeah, you know what, you can raise your rates. That's fine. We're okay with it. Well, on top of that, they have to still go in front of the board of mayor and aldermen to get approval too. So they're actually getting checked twice before they can give any kind of rate increase. So when you're looking at that there, it's a whole lot different ball game. Because you do have a government regulatory agency in TVA that is overseeing them and making sure that they're not taking and jacking rates up on us and trying to make money off the ratepayers. So they are kind of a different entity. Getting into Lexington water, sewer, and gas, they are controlled by the city. Different beast. They don't have the regulatory agency, so really it's the city itself is the board makes their decisions on what's going on there if they want to increase rates. So understand that there. But again, as people talk about, they're really upset with the rate increases as well. And with LES, the last two rate increases were not due to anything on their own part. This was due to TVA. Hold on, I got a message coming in. Right. Yeah. And I will stand on this here. Yeah. I don't have a problem with LES. I think LES is probably the best run department that we have in the city. Jeff Graves did a fine job, and I believe that Brad has stepped in as doing a fine job as well. And on top of that, there, you got to think about it. LES actually has some overall control of what's going on with LexNet. So it's two organizations that they're running here. But am I showing them as a favorite? No, I'm just based on the fact of how they operate. When I see things being done correctly, I think a pat on the back's well worth it. When I see things going wrong, then I think it needs to be pointed out. It's not about I like this person or that person, because honestly, I know a few people that work in each department, and that's about it. I just don't have the luxury of knowing everybody in these departments. So, understanding how that goes, I'm hoping that helps you understand where I stand at. Going back into water and sewer, I think that we have issues there. We are still seeing, I know I was being sent messages over the weekend from the people out in the western part of the county. Man, the water out there is bad. I mean, it was bad. I think it's a lot worse than the tainted look we had because the lines weren't being flushed in the past. But and I want to jump in and say something on that there. The problem that we had back, I guess, about a month ago with the water lines being, we're seeing tainted colors in there. It had nothing to do with the lake turning over. What it had to do with is we're not flushing the lines like we used to. I don't know why that is. I've got speculations, but I'm not going to share those with you right now because it's going to deal in facts. But yeah, and we still got this problem. And I know there was a line that was leaking, is what we were told, and the line got fixed, and there was a boil notice issued, and the boil notice was lifted. Okay, well then why are we still getting brown water out there if the boil notice is lifted? I mean, that's there's a problem here. And I know they were going to flush the lines out there, but why would you lift the boil notice if there are still water issues out there? Aren't you testing the water? I mean, it ain't that hard to take and go out there and check somebody's water. I mean, I would think that you knock on somebody's door, hey man, is your water brown? Yeah, it is. Okay, well, we need to flush your lines. I mean, it's not that hard. And as many people as we employ, that should be able to get done. I mean, yeah, these issues here that it's kind of like people are kind of hanging out there with not having good services provided to them. And that's a problem. And I want to go back again and let you guys know, because I'm kind of grouping in Lexington Utilities all the same, because they kind of fall under one umbrella. But let's see here. Gas has got $2.6 million in debt, and water and sewer's got 14.8. So, now I do know there was $10 million in bonds the last 2 years with the water and sewer department. And I know some of that there, I know we started getting charged more rate for the new fee was the technology fee that we started getting charged for. And then of course our rates were increased 2 years ago, and then they just increased them again. And our rates are going up, but yet, we've got a lot of debt there. And I know that the big talk is, well, they're going to put in new meters. Well, let's get down to it. I'm going to tell you what, we had new meters not too long ago. And I'm going to say it's been years, but the service life on those meters apparently was, I don't know if this was an effort to save money, but what I was told, and this came from Alderman, is that the service life of those meters was shorter than what the bond that was issued on those meters. In other words, the money they borrowed to buy them, well, they weren't going to have them paid off before the service life ended on those meters. And I think that ended up causing a problem. And, and right now, I don't think that they come by and read meters hardly at all, if ever. And I'll tell you how I know that. I can go right up here and pull the cover off my meter right now, and I guarantee you can't see it's covered in mud. I mean, and if it's not being a digital signal kicked off there, and I've got an old analog meter, then you don't know what's being spent out there. I mean, these are common sense things and then I got to want to know is how do you know what to charge me? You're going on an average about people around me or something. Well, that's not a fair assessment. I could be getting charged, especially now that the water with the most recent rate increase, we used to get, I think 2,000 gallons for free. And now they've gone back in and it's 1,000 is what we're getting for free. Yeah, I got a problem. Read my damn meter. Get out the truck, get off your butt, go out there, clean the mud off, read my meter, and tell me exactly what I'm using. So, you know what? If you do that there, I might actually find out I got a leak somewhere. Well, you haven't done your job, so I don't know. You may have a leak on your side, or the meter itself may be leaking. Well, nobody's checking it. I mean, come on. I mean, there's some common sense things that we got to look at here. But, when we get down to it, again, the utilities department has, they've got some debt, and it is what it is, and they get their money off the rates. Now I'm going to come back up in here. Let me get this back up again. The school system, I can't say anything because I don't pay any attention to the school system because I just don't get any complaints. I don't know what else to say there. I mean, I don't get any complaints about the city school system. I mean, everybody seems to be okay with it. So, I mean, I don't dig into it and I don't have any answers in regards to that there. Like I said, we've already been over to solid waste. that pretty much covers everything. But really, what I wanted to get out there and explain to you guys is that statement about the fact that there is no debt or zero debt was the term used. You know, that insulted my intelligence. I consider myself, somewhat of an intelligent person. I kind of look at things logically, but that just really insulted me to sit there and say, you're going to fall for the fact that we have no debt, and and to hear an alderman sit up and say, well, that's because people don't understand. Well, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to understand here, but obviously you don't understand is the fact that if you borrow money and you owe money, you are in debt. It doesn't matter what you got sitting in a savings account. It doesn't matter how much money you got coming in. You are in debt. You owe money. That's it. Now, if you want to pay it off, then you're not in debt. So you know what? What I do is welcome to city is if you guys got all this money to pay off $70 million in debt, then go pay it off. If not, we're in debt. But if you go pay it off and you show me a receipt saying, hey, we paid everything off, we have zero debt, I will come back up here and I will praise you guys. I'll pat you on the back. I'll even buy you lunch. But until then, please do not try to make us think that don't take the citizens for granted. Don't think that we're stupid and we can't pay attention to things. Boy, that's something that just burns me up. You guys I'm going to tell you right now, 470 votes. We're 3.5 days in. I'm going to call Saturday half day because it was only 3 hours. 470 votes. You're sending a message. You're talking. You're saying you're tired of it and you want to change. And I get it. I'm right there with you. And there's things that's come across that, I had a lady in today, an elderly lady, and she was misinformed by a candidate running for office. And I told her the truth. Not only that, I showed her the truth. Things that she was told differently, I actually was able to show it to her in a video taken from a city meeting. You can't argue the truth, people. You just can't. And however you want to, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. You just can't change this stuff here. But they believe that we fall for it. And that's a bad thing. Now, on this page, we try our best just to share information with you guys. And, do we make mistakes? Yes, we do. Sometimes we don't vet things the way we should have. And that's, and I'll take full responsibility for that. That's on me. But it's just like tonight when I came up here, I wanted to make that correction. And I wanted you to know, hey, I made a mistake. To me, if I do something wrong, I need to know about it so I can correct it and try to bring it to you. And give you the correct information. I believe that you deserve that. But it's, and I don't want to make excuses for that. It is what it is. I'm human. But for the most part, we do everything we can to make sure that everything we give to you is 100% factual. We don't have anything to gain from it. I'm not looking for a vote. I'm not running in an election. I am just a average, ordinary, everyday citizen like the rest of you guys that's just had about enough of government, continuing to overtax me and overcharge me on rates because they can't control their bad habits. That's just it. I got another comment up here. Don Davis Rawls, increased fees are just another form of tax. Yes, it is debt service, but it's paid by us. Amen, Donna. I mean, amen. There is no magic tree that they go up to at City Hall. There ain't one up there in D.C. at the White House. There ain't one anywhere. There's not one in Nashville where they can pick money off of and pull and pay for this stuff. We pay for it. It all comes from us, whether it's done through taxes or through rates. Put whatever name you want to put on it, but the money comes from us. That's where we are. So, understand that there. It is what it is. You're right, Tim. Keep voting. You guys, if you get out here and vote, if you've got questions about stuff, I'm going to tell you right now, stop by and see me. 76 South Main Street, Pretty Prawls Grooming, right beside the Princess Theater. Call me 731-307-8408. Shoot me a message up here. I'll talk to you. I'll give you the information that I have. If I don't have an answer for you, I'll do my best to get you an answer or point you in the right direction so somebody can give you an answer. I don't have all the answers. I don't. But I do my best to find the answers and to share them with people. But the one thing I like to do is at the end of the day, I'm just trying to out here help my neighbors, and I get it. Times are tight. They've been tight for a while. We've all struggled. And, some of us are in a position where, we can absorb these tax increases. We can absorb these rate increases, but some of them are not, and you guys need a voice. And that's what we try to happen here. Tim's buttering me up here. He's one of the smartest, honest people I know. He pulls the curtains back. Well, you know what? I just want you guys to know the truth. And it's sad that we have to take and push and push and push to get the truth. And then when we finally get a reply from government, we don't always get the truth. That's a bad thing. Moving on, let's go to something that I was kind of shocked this morning. This is kind of a feel-good story. Came into the shop this morning, checked the mail. We don't work on Mondays, and I'm gonna see if you guys can see this here. I'm behind on time delay, so hopefully you guys can see this here. I'm holding it up in front of yeah, you can see it right there. We had a letter in a mailbox addressed to the Hidden Agenda. Woohoo! That's the first time. Anyway, I got a letter, and I'm going to read it to you guys. Uh-oh. Well, maybe. I'm still seeing it up here on my phone, so we should be okay. From a concerned citizen, I wish to call attention to an issue that reflects the growing division within our community. Several candidates currently seeking public office have stated that they are actively engaging with residents. However, in recent discussions, including those featured on the Hidden Agenda, these same candidates have promoted ideas such as establishing a community garden, offering performance arts opportunities, and creating a venue for gospel events. What concerns me is that these resources already exist within our community through the Montgomery Enrichment Center, a historic institution in our area. The center maintains a community garden, has introduced performing arts classes, and possesses an auditorium suitable for concerts and community gatherings. The lack of acknowledgement of these established and historic resources suggests a disconnect between the candidates' claims and the realities of our community. What would truly impress residents is not the repetition of ideas we already have, but rather a genuine commitment to bringing people together and making every area of our small town stronger and more beautiful. As voters, we deserve to know whose voices are truly being heard and whose perspectives are being overlooked. All right. I'm going to sit here and tell you this straight up. I've never been out to Montgomery. I know it exists. I know I've seen Chris Moffitt put stuff up about the United Ways out there. I know about the barbecues going on and stuff. My time has never put me in a position ever to go out there. And a lot of times, I don't attend a tremendous amount of community events inside of Lexington. Again, that's time because my time is kind of split between work, family, and doing what I do here. I reached out today to a friend of mine, Brian Tubbs, and asked for a phone number, and he got me a phone number from Miss Jacqueline Taylor, and she's the president of the Montgomery, I believe it's Cultural and Enrichment Center. And I had a wonderful conversation with Miss Taylor, and I was supposed to get back with her this afternoon, and unfortunately time slipped away from me, and I wasn't able to prior to this meeting, but I do plan on contacting her back. And, I'd like to go out there and see Montgomery. I've heard those same things that I see in this letter, and I think it's wonderful that somebody actually mailed this in. This is, I haven't opened a letter in forever other than a bill. Whoever you are, thank you. Thank you so much for doing that there. You actually made my day this morning. Do we have a disconnect? I'm not going to mince words with you guys. I mean, do we have a problem with social statuses, races, or anything like that there that we're still dealing with? I mean, come on, this is 2025. We should long be past that there. We are all one humanity, and that should always be the case. You know, talking with Miss Taylor, I heard about, there's a senior center out there. They do senior activities. Why do we have two senior centers? Why don't we just have one? One that's, and then instead of pumping money from government money into one until two senior, and I don't think Montgomery's really getting any money whatsoever from the city and county. Why aren't we putting this money back into one area that can benefit everybody? I did some talking, because there's one thing I keep hearing about. It's an event center, and of course I always get resistance, but I don't mind addressing resistance. I don't think the Montgomery Center is big enough for the Carl Perkins Dancing with the Stars. I get it, but I don't want to build a building to do Dancing with the Stars either. That's just crazy. I had some people throw out to me today, oh, well, you know what, we need a big building so we can do horse riding and, and rodeo and different things. Okay. Why don't we have it outdoors already? Why aren't we doing these things right now? Why do we have to have a brand new building to do these things when we could be doing it right this moment? I always hear these excuses that we need to have big brand new things, but you know what? We don't need them. We can get by with what we have. We don't take any pride in what we have. We let stuff fall apart. We don't maintain it. We don't take care of it. And yet, all the wonderful things I heard today about the Montgomery Center is, here's a community that's actually doing the very things that we have problems with everywhere else. And you know what? That's exemplary. But, I really think that at this point in time frame, both mayors, the boards, the commissions need to get together and maybe talk with the Montgomery Center and see if they can't use this here for a place for all of the county, for all communities. Not just, one person or another because of whoever they are. You know what? Let's promote this here. Why doesn't the chamber promote this here? I mean, it's a historical building. They've got things going on. I mean, if you go back on their website, I actually went on there and I liked it today. There's some wonderful things happening. I'll say, I had no clue. I mean, I really didn't, because I don't see any promotion anywhere. And that's one of the reasons, when I want to promote this here. I think this is a wonderful thing that we could use. And if we're going to spend money into building new things, I think that's wrong. I think we need to take and shore up what we already have. And if the whatever entity wants to use the Montgomery Center, make a nominal donation up here, for use of the space, to help maintain it. I mean, this is how much money did we put into different nonprofit organizations? And we've got a goal. We've got, I'm not gonna say, I don't want to use, we have something wonderful that sits right in our community that we don't utilize. And I don't know why that is. I think that we need to take in, we need to get behind what's going on out there at Montgomery, and and there's so many different ways. You know what? And this, at the same time, we'll promote unity within our communities, and we will do our best to make use of a wonderful resource we have sitting right here and help it grow. I mean, this is I don't know. Like I said, I'll take the blame because I have not been out there to look into it, but I didn't know. I had no clue what everything, what was all done there, and that's my fault, because I haven't done that there. But in the future, I plan on getting out there and I'd like to tour the place and then see what it has to offer, and then see if we can't do something to help push that around in here. I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm going to jump back in here to some questions, and then I'm going to pop down here. There's a couple more things. One more thing I kind of want to hit on you guys with. Well, the bond company stating that last night was a total word salad. Yeah, I have not watched the video, but everybody I've talked to, I've watched bits and pieces of it. Everybody I talked to said, yeah. Word salad's a very good term for it. Yeah, you're right, Clay. Zero debt didn't sound right. All right, coming down here, Tim, their alumni got it together. Amazing group. Yeah. What I was told today was they actually have a new roof on out there. I mean, they're preserving our history. This is our history that's just sitting right here under our noses, and we're not making use of it. It kind of reminds me of last year when, again, another thing that I just, not being a lifelong resident, I don't have the luxury of seeing a lot of places, and learning about a lot of places. Thankfully, I catch a lot of information. Clay Crook helps me out a lot with understanding history. Philip Renfro is another one that has been instrumental in providing me history, so I can learn. But last year going out to the Beach River Museum, I mean, they were going to shut the thing down, and they were going to shut it down based on some falsehoods of it being flooded. Well, if you guys remember, we actually went downstairs and we did a video of it, and there wasn't no flood. And the only water was down there was being a basement. There's a sump down there. There was some water in the sump. It wasn't even over the top of the sump. I mean, come on. Don't, for somebody to try to sell us something that wasn't true, that burned me up. But we have history right now that's we're not taking advantage of. And, there are people out there at this moment just trying to preserve our history. And then there's people who are over here trying to tear it down so they can build the next new house or build a new city hall or build whatever. Now, we need to preserve where we came from. We need to have that there as an understanding. And I think that Montgomery Center is a good place that has a great potential for growing our community. I'm just hoping that some of our community leaders come up in here. I'm hoping the chamber pays attention to this video. The mayors, the board, the commission, go out there and see it. I mean, just go look for yourself and see if there's ways that we can utilize this here to benefit everyone. And I mean, like I said, it shouldn't be hard to take and pump a little bit of money back in as a donation to help maintain it. I mean, I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we simply aren't utilizing. Clay jumps in here. Montgomery is wonderful. When I was with the Progress, their events, programs, and especially hospitality was first rate. Vivian Keene, it was put on the National Registry of Historic Places in well, I'm not sure what year that is. I'm assuming 1997. I would assume that's a typo there, Vivian. And as Clay said, this is one of the few sites that we have of that distinction of being on a National Historical Register Society. So, I mean, here we are. We've got a gem sitting right up under our noses, and we're not making use of it. Anyway, like I said, in the future, I mean, doing a walkthrough video if they'll allow me to go through there and just show you what's going on over there, and maybe we can find a way as a community, as neighbors, to come together and make use of something that we've got that could be beneficial, and it won't put a burden on the taxpayers to have to fund an event center that just we don't need. I think we've got bigger fish to fry right now. We got to kind of figure out how to get out of $70 million of debt. Which, a big chunk of that's going to come out of the grants, but still, that's still going to leave us well over 50 million in debt. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But anyway, that's what I wanted to touch base with you guys on. I'm going to probably try to do a full meeting recap, from the board meeting. And really, I don't know if I will or not. I may just put it in a post because I think there's really only a couple of other things to go in there and talk about. I know there was, and actually, I'm here. I know that LPD was going to hire somebody, and they put that on until after the election is over. So I'm assuming this was probably some kind of mocking of the fact that we put about a bunch of hiring coming up before the election happened. When you actually have people in place that can give you the votes. The Lexington Utilities, I believe, only hired one. From when I was told, they were looking for 5. That they have 5 open positions. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this is me. If I'm an alderman, tell me the name of the 5 people that we have open. When did they leave? Give me a date when they left. And tell me about those open positions. I want to know. At this point in time frame, the trust is gone. So you're going to have to prove to me why you have 5 open positions. And if you come up in here, and tell me why they're needed, I question the same thing with the police officer. Well, if we're missing a police officer, how in the hell have we operated without that one officer? And if we've been able to operate with that one officer, then why do we need to replace it? I mean, that's just kind of a simple question to ask. But, like I said, I may come along on just a post and kind of update you guys on that there. I've been talking too damn long as it is. We're an hour into it. So I'm going to shut this here off for tonight, and I'm going to go relax. Again, if you guys have questions about anything, be it, what's going on, candidates, I will not tell you how to vote. I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. But if you call me and you tell me what your problems are, I can tell you where the candidates stand. I can tell you how their voting records are. I can tell you the conversations they have outside of the voting records. So you have full detail on where they really, really, really stand. I don't mind talking to anybody and sharing information. I have nothing to gain from this here whatsoever, and I'm just trying to make sure that things are done right. And in the best interest of the citizens, not the government. Government is here to serve us. We are not here to serve them, and that's been lost, and that needs to change. But anyway, if anybody needs to reach me, come by Pretty Paul's Grooming beside the Princess Theater. They probably don't want me to say Princess Theater up there because that's probably a bad thing being associated with me, and there is no association. That's just a landmark that everybody knows. Give me a call, 731-307-8408, or send me a message on Facebook. I'll be more than happy to help anybody out however I can. Even if you've got issues, if you don't have any questions, if you've got something going on that you can't address it, give me a call. I make no promises, but I'll do everything I can to help you out. That's just a neighborly thing to do. Anyway, y'all have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And we will chat the next time around. I'm not sure when we're going to have another one, but I'll post it up the day before to let you know. There is one other thing, too, I wanted to touch base with you on. Coming up here in the next few days, we're and I'm behind on, this is my fault again. I'm behind on because I got so much going on. Too many irons in the fire. I don't know the date here. Kim Gill can... For you guys who don't know, Kim, she owns HTO. Now she's put on a monster bash to help raise money for the Francis Hensley Center. Now at our shop, we've actually got forms up there. If you want to come in and pick up a form, where you can get up on a recurring donation, or you can set up with your utility bills, where you can, if your bill's $2.59, it'll round it up to $3. So 41 cents, that round up money will go out to the Hensley Center as well. And we have been, we touched base on it, and we're trying to get this here done. Like I said, I'm behind the 8 ball on it, but where we're going to do quarterly contests within the city and county school systems. So what we're trying to do is get younger generation involved. And then our goal is to create a YouTube channel for like a spirit type award where each one of the classes, do a little video of the class, whatever it is that they want to put up there and promote on a YouTube channel, which will be solely for this. It's called Art for Animals. We're going to take and use that channel to, share these kids being engaged and being involved in trying to help us right the wrongs with animal abuse, animal neglect, strays and moving forward. And then what we're hoping to do is, there's probably, 3,500 kids in all between city and county schools. If, each one turns in a project, if we're going to try to figure out a way to auction those projects out. And, we figure we start the auction at $1. So if they do a drawing, we'll have a page where you can go up there and bid $1 for your child's painting. Well, you think about it. If we can get everybody to bid $1 at $3,500, well, guess what? That's quite a bit of money quarterly that we can help out with the Hensley Center. And then we're also going to look to take some of that money and put into the art programs in the school systems, and to help out with the Spay Neuter Alliance here in Henderson County. So we're trying to take and help correct this issue here, and we're trying to maybe change the generational perspective of how animals should be treated, as opposed to being disposable. I hate to say that term, but that's pretty much what it is. So, maybe we can do one thing at a time. So we're going to be, in the next couple of weeks, we are really going to be rolling this stuff here out and promoting this stuff a lot more. I'm going to probably try to shift gears with with the hidden agenda to try to share some of this information out there as well, bringing on different people. So anyway, bear with us on that there. We could probably use community support as much as possible. We'll get some more information rolling on that as quickly as we can. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to get out of here. I've kept y'all too long. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it more than you know. Thank you for being engaged, and wanting to know what's going on in your local government. And I'm going to tell you right now, a huge shout out to you guys. 470 votes. Boy, that's a lot of votes. That's a lot of votes this early in the election. Anyway, have a wonderful night. We'll catch you guys next time.